All right, caller, what's your name and what is your comment or question?
Benjamin, this is James Stepp calling. I just wanted to call and discuss with you respectfully why it's specifically Black Lives Matter when it should be All Lives Matter. And I'm going to be respectful to you and your audience because I know this is your show, but I'd like a response on that.
Okay, say it one more time. Ask the question. I thought you had a statement, but it's a question. Go for it one more time.
Okay. The question is, why specifically when we're discussing the Black Lives Matter movement, we're all human beings. Why is it that all lives matter? Why shouldn't we be calling out oppression and police brutality when it comes to all races? Why is it specifically, why do minorities for some reason have a monopoly on things
Their
like
lives
that
matter.
when that happens?
Okay, that's a fair question. James, let me ask you this. Are you a Bernie supporter? And it's a very specific reason I'm asking.
I'm a constitutional conservative. I don't typically support Bernie. No, I haven't donated his campaign affiliated with it. I don't support him. No.
Okay. All right, great. So now the reason I asked that, the reason I asked that is because whether or not I'm going to speak from the realm of pragmatism or idealism. Here, I'm going to talk to you from idealism. Here's the truth of the matter. Black people are at the bottom. Well, let me reverse that. Black people are at the top of every negative statistic in the United States of America. Now, some people either believe that this is simply because they're Black, or you believe that there's something going on because if we're all human, what is happening in the Black community that they are at the bottom of at the top of every negative statistic that we have in the United States of America. All right. So Black people are at the bottom or at the top of every negative statistic that we see. If we begin to unpack the reasons why, then we'll see economic factors, we'll see systemic factors, we'll see social factors, we'll see all type of factors that we can address. The reason it's okay to say Black Lives Matter is because right now we see across America that Black people are disproportionately affected by all of these negative factors. They're disproportionately affected by racial profiling by the police, which in itself becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that the statistics are now biased because police are giving undue attention to Black people when particularly, let's look at drugs, right? White people are just as likely to be consumers of drugs, illicit drugs. However, Black people are statistically more likely to be approached and profiled and arrested and spend longer time in jail because of it. Now, the simple answer is this. Once you begin to fix the problems in the Black community that are systemic, that are economic, that are social, once you address those, the ramifications will reverberate through the entire nation. Everyone is going to benefit once we fix racial profiling. Everyone is going to benefit once we fix economic disparity. And once we fix and this is the reason I asked you if you're a Bernie supporter, is because I think you would automatically make that connection. You cannot fix something in the Black community and not have it positively affect the entire community. Now, that's just the idealistic side. Flip that on its head. Here's another reality. Okay, here's the other reality of it is what we experience. The economic disparity that Bernie talks about all of the time, it is disproportionately felt by people of color. The systemic injustices that Bernie talks about, it is disproportionately felt by people of color. And so if the problem is magnified and intensified in the Black community, there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking a moment and saying Black Lives Matter. Let's focus on that. Let's address that. Let's unpack that. Do all lives matter? Well, absolutely. Do white lives matter? Absolutely. Every life matters. But to be fearful of saying Black lives matter is to say that you're afraid of addressing it head on. And so I think anyone who is a progressive, anyone who's a Bernie supporter should be able to see that the same problems that Bernie talks about are systemically entrenched and disproportionately affect minority communities. Now, James, I disconnected you so I could pick up the other caller, and that other caller has dropped the line. So 562, if you're going to call back, feel free to call back and we'll address it again. Because one thing we do here is we can debate any topic. All right, this phone call is connecting. Here we go.
Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry. Is this Jason or was it James?
It's James.
James, this is Benjamin Dixon from the Benjamin Dixon Show. How are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. My producer saw a comment on I guess YouTube, and you felt that I wasn't giving you time to share an alternate idea. So I have ended my radio show, but my YouTube broadcast is still going, and we have people in the room listening. So I want to give you the floor, and we have about 15 minutes before I absolutely must go. But I think that's enough time for us to have a rigorous debate.
Okay, that'd be excellent. I greatly appreciate you taking the time. So should we just jump right in then?
Go for it. I'll give you the floor. You got it.
Okay, so I totally understand where you were coming from initially when you were talking about how blacks and minorities are typically at the top of all the negative statistics in this country. But conveniently, you did leave out a couple of statistics, and I'd like to point those out, namely two. The first one being that a lot of the black-on-black crime that results from some of the major inner cities that are locally, at the local level, governed by liberal democratic policies, that's almost never addressed. At least it seems like to me whenever we hear about Black Lives Matter. I don't know if that's because, there's something I'm missing, or it's something that you guys just would prefer to not discuss openly. But I think that the number was somewhere between over 90% of Black deaths are caused by other Black people, and I don't think that that's anything to do with racism. I think it's tragic. It's horrible. I mean, and it's. I don't look at it as a race issue. I look at it as a horrible, tragic crime issue, and that's almost never being discussed by the Black Lives Matter movement. And the second thing, I briefly brought it up, was in all these inner cities where you see racial profiling, like Baltimore, Chicago, New York, liberal democratic policies are also governing those areas and have been for quite some time, not just a few years. I'm talking about decades. Decades of liberal economic policies have done nothing to help Black lives, have done nothing to help Black youth, who are largely the most unemployed among all minorities when it comes to the youth demographic. So that was my answer. I would like you to address those specific statistics and tell me why that is, and why it seems like, at least to me, that that's not being addressed.
All right. Good questions. I'm glad that you asked, and I'm glad I called back so we can unpack that. All right. First, black on black crime is actually a twofold question. There's actually three questions there. The first one was actually two-part. You're dealing with black on black crime in general.
I'm talking about death. I'm talking about
okay, I'm sorry. No, I was
in terms of Black death.
Sorry, I was reading a message. So the black on black crime in general, that's one. But then two, dealing with the fact that it's happening in liberal in cities that are run by quote unquote liberal policies. All right, number one, the black on black crime, it's actually 93%, and it is tragic. It is horrible, but it's not because of blackness. White on white crime is about 85%. 85% of white people are killed by white people. That's because crime, murder in specific, is a crime of familiarity. If you're going to kill somebody, you're going to kill someone you know. So this really speaks to the fact that communities are just almost as segregated as they've always been. You're not going to go just, very seldomly do you see people running to just kill anybody, right? Just to kill somebody just on a random spree. That's not the lion's share of the crime rate with regard to murder. Murder is always overwhelmingly based on people people you interact with, your neighbors. You're going to kill your neighbors. And that's true across the board in every demographic. So to cite the 93% black on black crime is a convenient statistic, but it doesn't tell the whole story, because 85% of white people are killed by white people. Now, that's the first part.
You don't see gang violence. You don't see gang violence on the scale that you do see in inner city Chicago or LA or New York.
Well, you do realize
that you see it in predominantly white neighborhoods. Why is
you do realize now crime in general is an economic phenomenon. And it's statistically shown
that is true.
So the question should be, why are blacks disproportionately impoverished? Because in impoverished communities, you always see more crime. But then, second of all, you have to look at the means by which we categorize it and we label it with regard to. Hang on, let me finish this.
Leading the economic policies in those areas, seeing the largest share of black on black and minority on minority crime. Who's in charge of the local creation of jobs, the rising of wages, home sales, grants and scholarships to students, things of that nature? Who's in charge of that in those communities that see the largest share of black on black crime?
Okay, I'm going to get back to your fundamental misunderstanding.
You did bring up a valid point about how economic situations can cause that crime like that, and I'm
right. No, and I hear you.
And I'm asking you who's in charge of the economics of those inner cities.
James, let me finish my thought. I don't like losing my train of thought, and I've almost lost it, but I'm not going to lose it. You have to go back to the means by which we label, categorize, and I don't want to say promote, but the way we cast a narrative. You said that we don't see gang violence. Gangs are nothing more than organized crime. When you say organized crime, you cannot say organized crime without addressing the mafia and the mob.
Mafia and gangs now have nothing to do. Are you aware that in general, the mafia and Italian mob bosses stayed away from drugs and only dealt with racketeering, illegal fight clubs?
Are you wait, then hang on. Are you saying that are there until the 80s, right? That's definitely all of your life, and that's most of my life. Are you saying that we should qualify that? Okay, hang on. I'm not going to chase that red herring. Let me finish my point. When you talk about organized crime, then you will see that it is endemic throughout the United States across every demographic. You cannot say gang violence is a problem in the black community without saying that the mafia and the mob, who are engaged incessantly for years, James, they have been engaged in crime all along, right? So we categorize it as two different things. We try to make it seem like it's two different things, but crime is crime, murder is murder, drugs are drugs, prostitution is prostitution. So you may say that there are no crime problems in the white community, there are no gang problems in the white community. You may say that there's no gang problems, right? You said gangs. You said gangs. Am I not? Is that not what you said?
Well, crime in black communities.
Did you say gangs? You said there's no gang violence in overwhelmingly in the white communities. That's pretty much what you said. That being the case, if you don't label it as you label everything else organized crime, then yeah, you would assume that there's no gang violence. But when you realize that gangs, and here's how you measure it. When they try gangsters, they try them underneath the RICO Act because they try them as organized crime, just like they would any mafia, any mob. Now, getting back to your other point with regard to liberal economic policies, you cannot look at a city anymore and say that city is an island unto itself. That city is subject to every economic global factor, not just national factor. There are so many national economic factors that affect every single city. There's not a city that is an island unto itself that can engage in policies that are beneficial for their citizens, for their residents, that is not affected by every economic shift that we've taken in the United States as a whole. What I'm saying is this, is that there has been a paradigm shift across the United States that has made it more difficult for the impoverished and for the middle class in general. And you cannot look at a city and say that city is doing poorly because of the local leadership, and not look at the.
It has everything to do with it. Not everything. It has a large part to do with it. I mean, look at New York. They raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour. You don't think that that's going to cause the cost of services and goods to go up? You don't think that that's not going to negatively impact the minority and youth? Not just minority, everybody's youth employment statistics. You don't think it's going to be harder for young people to find a job now that employers are in the fast food industry are required by law now in New York City to offer $15 an hour as a minimum wage? You don't think that's not going to negatively impact that?
No, I don't think that's going to do that, because we've seen economic evidence not only recently, but we've seen it throughout American history that if you pay and you help build a middle class, you help build people financially, those people are consumers. They are going to spend every dollar that an American citizen makes that is in the middle class We overwhelmingly spend that. Our economy is a consumer economy. 75% of our economy is a consumer economy. That being said, you cannot give someone a wage in the middle class and not expect that money to cycle right back into the economy. A person who makes $20,000 a year, they're going to spend $25,000, $30,000 a year. So if you pay them $15 a year, that money is not getting caught up and locked in. That money is going right back into the economy. So when you pay people, that becomes a stimulus. That does not become an economic trap. Where it becomes an economic trap is when you give tax cuts to corporations who absolutely have no incentive then to reinvest that money. We saw that with the debt crisis. We saw companies with trillions of dollars of wealth.
I totally agree with you on the corporate tax break.
So exactly.
Yes, I totally agree with you on that.
So we see, but you see that once we give those tax breaks, that money becomes locked up. It doesn't cycle back through the economy and is not a stimulus. But when you give it to the middle class and you give it to the impoverished, that money flows right out of their pockets because they have to spend $40,000 a year just to live. Now, in New York, if you're not making I don't even know how you make it on $15 an hour. And so if you're not making it on $10 and $15 an hour, that becomes a strain.
I can make it on less than 15. I'm not sure why you're saying that because I don't get paid a minimum wage. I'm a truck driver. My loads total out to about between $13 an hour and 14, and I make it just fine. It's about living within your means. So I'm not necessarily.
Where do you live?
I have a family.
Where do you live?
All that. So
where do you live? Now, I mean, you don't have to tell me the city, obviously. What state do you live in?
I live in Ohio.
You live in Ohio. Man, listen, I wish I lived in Ohio.
I know the cost of living in Ohio compared to New York is significantly lower. I'm just saying
100% different, man. I live in Massachusetts. You cannot make it. And let me finish the point. I don't want to keep chasing after things. Okay. Here's the point. The point is, if we don't pay people, they will become a strain on our safety nets. And so for a constitutional conservative like you should be more in favor of saying, if we can pay people a living wage, then they don't have to live on the safety nets as much. And so it's less socialism per se, it's less welfare per se, and that's better. I don't see how that doesn't line up with a person who is a conservative.
Okay, since you're addressing that specific point about the constitutional conservatism bit, the Constitution does not guarantee anything about a minimum wage. It guarantees the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness bit, and the government, local, state, or federal, cannot mandate that someone must pay an employee a specific wage set by that state or local.
But they can.
That is.
Let me tell you why they can.
You're telling someone what to do when they have no constitutional right to do so.
Let me tell you why they can. And this is the fault of the states. This is their fault. When you receive an economic package of benefit from the federal government, they can make the foundation. They can make the requirements that must be met for you to get those funds. So if these states if they want to say, well, we don't want federal mandates, then stop receiving any federal funds. Stop receiving any loans to help your economy, your local economy. It's the same thing with churches. So if you are a constitutional conservative, then you should almost be against the tax breaks that churches get, because for two reasons. One, it's unconstitutional, but then two, churches, if you receive money from the government or through the form of a tax break, then you are also subject to what the government is going to want to dictate to you. So it's the same thing on the state level. If the government absolutely has the right to dictate the terms of the funds that they're going to give you. And that's the way we see the Department of Education manipulating and doing the things that it does to the benefit of the common welfare, to promote the general welfare. So we can talk about the Constitution, but they're also embedded in the preamble is the fact that we want to promote the general welfare. I have a few more minutes, man. I'll let you get the last word.
I understand. Turning that all and tying this all back into their original argument is that the government is in the business of picking winners and losers when it comes to tax breaks, welfare incentives, grants, and things of that nature. How do you explain then over the last 8 years or the last 7 years or so with
Obama?
Obama. And I know the president is not just run by one person. I'm not ignorant to think that. Okay, but what I'm saying is most of his policies that he's wanted, such as the Affordable Care Act, totally lost my train of thought. Overall liberal economic policies coming from the federal government, at least at the state level, and the money's going to the states. We're still seeing drops in black employment. We're still seeing a huge wage gap between young black people and young white people and older white people. So if the answer is more progressive politics, more Democratic Party control, we should get behind, Democratic candidate A, B, or C, because they represent what's best for our community. How is that good when we've seen the results of those policies and they are inherently negative to your own community?
I think you're allocating the effects of there's three levels of mistakes there. One is that the results that you're talking about are not exactly entirely accurate, but then two, there's not really a causation relationship there. There may be a correlation relationship there, but definitely not a causation. The problem of black unemployment has been a true problem for generations. I mean, we cannot address black unemployment and the economic climate of getting worse. It's getting worse for everyone, right? Let's just be clear. We just came out of a recession. We came out of a recession that devastated our economy. And so, like I said at the beginning of our conversation, or at the beginning of the show, there are no negative statistics that black people are not the top of. So if unemployment got bad for everyone because of the recession, it got even worse for African Americans. And so there is a correlation, but I think you're implying a causation relationship that is not there. Black unemployment has been a problem for generations, and you cannot discuss it without discussing the systemic factors that have made that the case. You cannot discuss the problems in the hood per se without discussing the factors that maintain a hood, that create the hood. You cannot discuss any of these things without the context of, think of it this way. Let's just be reasonable. 400 years of slavery. Let's trim that down. Let's say 350 years of slavery, 100 years of Jim Crow segregation, and about 50 years where we have had the opportunity to vote and begin to choose our own destiny. Can we really expect that those last 50 years pale in comparison to the negative effects of the previous 400 years? Well, now we don't blame it there.
That's my whole point, is who was in charge of the 350 years? Who was at the forefront of slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, fighting the civil rights? And don't even bring up Strom Thurmond, because I know what you're going to say about the Dixiecrats. I understand that. But you have the Democratic Party is the party of slavery. So when you're saying that,
come on, James,
Republicans, I'm being dead serious.
Go ahead. I'm gonna let you finish that sentence. Let's go ahead. Go for it.
You're obfuscating, and you're not really, you're sidestepping and trying to point out why, that those statistics aren't accurate. Those statistics are irrelevant. Those statistics don't apply here. We need to look at this. When 90% of the problems initially in this country that were caused against black people were caused by people that were either A, part of the Democratic Party system, or B, were sympathetic to the Democratic Party.
Or beneficiaries.
I just don't understand why you want to continue along that path.
Or beneficiaries of that system, right? It's not just the people who were directly the landowners. So, oh man, you've unpacked a whole nother, we've been 18 minutes. All right, I'm going to go 20 minutes with you, 25 minutes. Here we go.
Well, I gotta go to work, so
right.
I'll let you have the last word here.
Okay, yeah, because I've got to get to some other things today. First of all, you cannot look at the Republican and Democratic parties today and in any measure consider them to be the Democratic and Republican parties of pre-1964. You can't. You already ran right into it with Strom Thurmond and the Dixiecrats. You have to look at the ideology, and you have to look at the region. When you look at the region and the ideology, it has always been conservatism, and it has always been the South. Now, I'm going to unpack something for you, and I'm going to give you a couple of bones here, because I am not absolving modern Democrats of anything, which is why you see Black Lives Matter taking it to modern progressives just like they would take it to Republicans. Because even though there was a strong shift in 1964 and we saw a realignment where the South had been predominantly Democratic for years, it was Democratic, no question. During slavery, the Klan, the Ku Klux Klan, a Democratic foundation, and a Christian foundation, by the way. But you cannot look at the South now and think that it is Democratic. No, you can't look at the Klan now and say, oh, they're a Democratic organization. No. Who do you think they voted for in 2008 and 2012? There was a fundamental shift in 1964 because of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act that shifted the South away from the Democratic Party. Does that mean the Democratic Party is clear and free?
The Republican Party supported the Civil Rights Act. There were many, even Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton's mentors.
Listen, what I'm trying to hear, you're missing the point.
Civil Rights Act.
Here's the point. It was about the South. It was not about the party name. It was about the region and the ideology. Now, you tell me, who has won the South over the last 50 years? What party has won the South over the last 50 years?
The Republican Party.
The Republican Party. So you can't bring the argument.
Most of the Southern governments, most of the state and local governments in the South that are run by Republican are inherently or systemically racist in nature.
No, I'm saying America in general. So going back to where I was going to give you a couple more bones, the South was not the only part of the nation that benefited from slavery. There's a cotton mill. There was a cotton processing gin here in Lowell. Well, not here. I don't live in Lowell, but in Lowell, Massachusetts. That entire economy in Massachusetts was built off of the residuals of slavery, right? They would pick the cotton in the South and it would get shipped to the South. The vestiges and the lingering baggage of slavery and white supremacy is endemic to the entire nation. But if we're going to get into the blame game, then you can't look at and say, oh, well, the Democratic Party was the party of the Klan and slavery, and not ask, well, where are those people now? Where are those people now? Where's the Klan now? Where are all the Southerners now? You know, so if we're going to do the blame game, you can neither absolve the Democratic Party, but you cannot discuss it without casting it in light of where those people are now. And they are absolutely in the Republican Party. Am I saying the Republican Party en masse is racist?
Totally disagree.
No.
Continue.
No, I'm not saying that the Republican Party en masse is racist. And I'm not saying that all Democrats are non-racist, right? There are plenty of problems.
But you are somewhat by saying that, you know, the people essentially saying that the people who laid the foundation, their ideology has switched parties and transferred into the essence or part of the party platform.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why I'm glad you said that. Because one of the things I do, one of the things I see the root cause is never about disliking a particular race. It's never about, oh, there are people who are like this, like, oh, he's dark, he's a blackie, I don't like him. There are people like that. But that is not the reason for that was not the reason for slavery. That is not the reason for the continued vestiges of white supremacy. The reason for slavery was for cheap labor, free labor. That is it. And that is a paradigm that is at the fundamental core of capitalism unfettered, right? I believe I'm a capitalist, but when you have unfettered capitalism, it says, let me go and find the cheapest labor. And if that labor is slavery, so be it. So we built an economy in the United States off the backs of slavery, not because we hated black people or they hated us.
Part of it was the technological.
Right, the Industrial Revolution.
The cotton gin didn't come around long enough.
Right.
And the South did not have the industrial base large enough. They were actually moving towards that towards the end of the Civil War, and I think that
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you.
It's a whole nother topic.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. But it's very relevant to this conversation because it is an economic phenomenon. It was because now here's how they implemented it. You can't do something to a human being like that without dehumanizing them, without making them monsters, without trying to justify it religiously, without trying to use any means and mechanism to justify slavery. You can't do it because human nature will win out. Humans, I think at a very fundamental core, this is where I'm idealistic and I may be naive. At a very fundamentalistic core of humanity, we are benevolent. At times, we vacillate between benevolence and maleficence, right? But at times, we are benevolent and we're caring and we see other human beings. So you cannot go with hundreds of years of slavery without intentionally making people feel, well, that doesn't matter because they're not really human. They're animals. They're barbarians. We're doing them a favor. We brought them to America. We're helping them out. That entire trope of the dehumanization of African Americans for the purposes of slavery, that was an economic tool. That was a tool to continue slavery long enough for the economic system of the United States to kick off. It's not because they just hate it. Now, the results, the residuals, and the results are felt today as just pure hate, right? Pure hate. People still think, Dylan Roof, he felt that we were savages and that we were raping his women and taking over his country. That does not happen.
He's not totally representative.
No, I'm not talking at this point. I'm not talking about any specific ideology. I'm talking about America in general right now, right? So I'm not laying this at the feet of Republicans or conservatives. I'm laying this at the feet of America, right? You don't get born into that type of mentality without years. I mean, before he was even born, of the dehumanization and the vilifying rather of Black people. And so the results are just as nefarious as the reason. And the reason was economics. The reason was economic factors. And now to go full circle all the way back to some of the things we were saying at the top of the conversation, it is not the economic factors cannot at this point right now in 2016, 15 cannot be laid at the feet of the Republicans or the Democrats. It has to be laid at the feet of this entire paradigm that we've been living under for almost over a generation. We've been living under an economic paradigm of not true laissez-faire capitalism, but as close to laissez-faire capitalism as America can tolerate. And those effects have been ravaging. And that's fine that you disagree, but there's plenty of evidence to show that.
I just don't have the time to refute every single aspect. Of that.
And that's fair. You know why? Because I don't have enough time. I don't have the stats in front of me. So what we can do, because I have to go, and I know you have to go. Let's pick up this conversation another day. I want to make sure that you don't feel that I'm dodging you, because one thing I never do is dodge.
I appreciate that.
I don't dodge anybody. But when we come back next time, let's bring up the economic factors and let's compare the period in which we had more Keynesian economics to the period where we have had more laissez-faire trickle-down economics. And let's compare not just in the last 30 years and then the pre-Civil War, but let's go pre-depression. Let's look at the Gilded Age.
You're talking like 1920s America and even Industrial Revolution.
Let's go from there.
Late 19th century, correct?
Absolutely. Let's go from the late 19th century, early 20th century, all the way up to today. And I will put money on it that you will not be able to look at the ebbs and flows and not say, when we were engaged in Keynesian economics, we did better for the average American. And then when you look at the ebbs, you'll say that's when we were doing more for the top 1%. Now, that's my theory. That's my thesis.
I will take that bet, and I will bet you $50 to your favorite charity as that I can refute that statistically. I will bet you $50 on the air. I'm a man of my word. All right. $50 to your favorite charity that I can refute that statistic and show you that that is completely a false assertion.
All right. Sounds good. You know where to find me. You find me on YouTube. We will do that. I will take that as a gentleman bet $50 to your favorite charity. And we're going to bring statistics and we're going to look at it. And I'm going to win. But I do appreciate the conversation.
I will enjoy the challenge. I respect you and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to discuss this. So I will be in touch soon. That's when we'll pick this up.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot. Everyone listening in, my producer wants to let you know, first of all, James, thanks for the conversation, man. It was a great conversation and we definitely can do it again anytime I have the extra time to do it. Take care. Producer wants me to let everyone know we're approaching 2,100 subs. Now, guys, with a show like we do here, we need 10,000 people. So I want you to subscribe. I want you to share. We're going to cut this last segment that I just did with James and we'll make it a video by itself. I want you to share, like, subscribe, and tell people about us. Help us to get to 3,000 subs as quickly as possible. Follow us on Twitter at The BPD Show. Go to facebook.com/The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like it, share it, like it. If you dislike it, dislike it. Doesn't matter. Just talk, comment, do all that stuff. And I don't have any outro music, and I've already played my outro music, so I'm going to play my intro music, and I'm getting out of here.
And here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the right of human beings to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You certainly come to the right place.
See you guys next time.